Hey, Kelsey, Norm MacDonald here. So, you have a podcast, huh? Fantastic. You know what I always say? You know what the world needs more of? Podcasts.
Live from the Screwball Whiskey Studios, the Kelsey Hudgins Show.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Live from the Screwball Whiskey Studios, indeed. That is SKREWBallWhiskey.com. Tomorrow's stories begin right here. Hashtag get screwed. Hashtag screw it forward. All other peanut butter whiskeys are posers. Screwball Peanut Butter Whiskey is the one and only original peanut butter whiskey. Go and get yourself a couple bottles. You'll wish you had two if you only get one. And as always, I'm reminding you to drink Screwball Whiskey responsibly. That's the way. That's the way to do it. We are doing this podcast thing again after all these years. I finally have my setup proper here in the new house in Austin, Texas. In sunny Austin, Texas. Anyway, how the hell are you guys? We're gonna do a little howdy in the chat. Chris Cornelius, Jason, Valish. He's a fella. That's right. You know what? We've got in preparation of Jurassic World Dominion coming on tomorrow. We've got I had Jurassic World playing just then there. Me and a couple of work folks are going to go see the new movie tomorrow morning, the day that it comes out, the matinee. We're going to go see it. Anyway, so I'm going to get right into it. I had a should I click this? Is that a little better? Nah. Let's go here. Let's go back where we were. Anyway, so I had a conversation with my buddy Matt, who I went to high school with at Stevens Christian Academy in Bennettsville, South Carolina. And the other day we were talking about, he asked me about a situation that I guess I should probably tell you that story first, but I wanted to make sure to give Matt credit for asking me to do this episode. And I could have mentioned this a couple of times in my old podcast, the MI Stuff podcast, which all of those episodes are still out there. Yeah, you can get them on Apple Podcasts or anywhere podcasts are available pretty much. They're still out there and available, so yeah, definitely go check those out. And if you want to hear any of the old stories and shit like that. But anyway, long story short, I'm trying to center myself. There we go. I was going the wrong way. So anyway, where do I start? All right, I'll just start at the beginning. So this story it takes place when I am 15 years old. And I had a teacher at the Christian school where I went who she would always pick all of the students up. She was everybody's favorite. Everybody loved her. And she would pick us all up and take us to do things like recreational things, just like take us out to dinner or take us to the movies and shit like that. It was like pretty much you would do this with the whole class. So, long story short, I ended up like just I don't know. I was 15, I guess. I was just going through those the teenage years of hormones or whatever you go through at that time. So I was doing all of that, going through all of that, and the teacher was there. So we started talking on the phone or whatever about my just not having a lot of confidence in myself. And just, I don't know, not knowing how to act around girls or things like that, not knowing how to court a lady. And it started off as her trying to, like, help me deal with that shit. Like, help me figure out how to communicate and how to talk with girls and things like that. So that's what it ended up becoming in the beginning. And I honestly, like, it was just the sort of thing to where I was uncomfortable talking about the stuff, but the situation was where she would be like, oh, you can talk to me about anything. We're friends, and I'm here to help you. God has put me in you kids' lives to help you, and I'm here to do that. And so I was like, okay, well, this checks out. So I started talking to her about these situations and letting her into my head and how I felt about all of, well, it's hard to talk about because I don't want to use like buzzwords involving this thing. I don't want to say certain things because I'm not comfortable with, like, using the words associated with it that I'll get into more later. But if you're wondering why I'm going to be, like, kind of kicking rocks around what I'm trying to say and not exactly being just coming out right and saying things, it'll make more sense later. And I'm sorry that I'm just going to be rambling a little bit because it's kind of like it's a serious subject. Anyway, long story short, I'm going to say long story short a lot. I shouldn't have hit that gravity bong right before I started this, but here we are. I would have long conversations with my teacher on into the night, and it would be about sexually oriented things like, well, I'm feeling this right now in my life and I don't know how to deal with it. I can't talk to my parents because I'm embarrassed. I can't talk to my family about it because I'm embarrassed. So I talked to her, and she sort of cultivated this. And mind you, I was 15 at the time and she was 24. Or 26, she was 20 something. She was mid 20s. So I didn't say that yet, but now you know. Anyway, started cultivating that relationship, I guess, not knowing not knowing on my part what was going on for sure. So after a while of having these late night phone calls and things like that, and this was the time before cell phones were like a thing, really, that everybody had. So, you could pick up one phone in the house and you'd hear conversations. You could pick up a phone and hear all the conversations being had. So, pretty sure a couple of my family members heard some conversations we were having and maybe had some questions or whatever, but we're not quite there yet. The long story short, I've said it again. See, I can tell I haven't done a podcast in a while because I'm just doing shit that annoys me in podcasts. Like, oh, you saying long story short again. Here it is. Just fucking, it's bothering me. And now I even regret starting the episode already because I'm like, why am I putting myself and everybody else through this? Sorry. I trusted her, and I think that is something that happens all too often that doesn't get light shed upon it because I was a male, because I was a young man, and like it doesn't hit the same way, and I don't think that it gets enough recognition because of it happening to a guy, but all of that will kind of come into play a little later. So this starts with me just pretty much like, I would say something like, yeah, and I don't know what to do. I just get these boners all the time. I don't know what to do with them. I guess I was getting a little too comfortable talking to her about things like that. And again, anybody who knows me well knows that, like, I don't really have any kind of like sexual connotation to some of the things that may be sexual to other people. So, like, for instance, I could talk about these things and it not be like I'm trying to have a sexual conversation. Like, I mean, sometimes I am. Don't get me wrong. There's people that I have those with for sure as an adult now. But then, and even like for instance, I streamed my shower. I streamed myself in the shower for years on Discord and on like Periscope when Periscope was a thing. I did that for a long time. There's never anything sexual about that. Like, it's just that it was just something that I did, and I would like, that was sort of part of it. It was just like, there was nothing, it was nothing weird about it. So that's how I go about this shit. But anyway, I had this relationship with her that I don't think any of the rest of my classmates had. And then I think I started to notice that. So it got to the point to where she would be telling me on the phone, you know, well, deal with the boner. Deal with it. And I'm like, what do you mean deal with it? And she would like verbally, I'm not going to go into detail, but she would just verbally explain to me what to do in this situation, and she literally talked me through, basically masturbating. And it's not that I was a child. In my mind at the time, I was like a young adult, and I was kind of understanding a little bit of what was going on, I think. But looking back now, as a 35-year-old, this was 25 years ago, or this was 20 years ago. As a 35-year-old now, I look back, and at 15, nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows what they're doing. Like, nobody is in control, like, at 15. Like, it's just not a thing. So, anyway, I would be walked through that situation of like how to masturbate, and she would just tell me. So basically this was phone sex, I guess, is what was going on to start with. And that happened a few times, and then it got to the point to where like now I was sexually attracted to her and was pretty much like innocent Christian boy. I really was a good Christian boy. I was in a Christian band. I would preach sermons at men's club meetings and stuff like that. Like I would literally preach sermons. And I was very much in line. I wanted to be a preacher. I wanted to become a preacher. And that was my end game. So I was very, very disappointed in myself. Like, that was when I used to pray for forgiveness for masturbating. Like, I'm so sorry, God. This is, I wish you would take the desire from me to do this. I wish you would remove the desire. And like, I was very conflicted with my religious upbringing and the things that I was experiencing naturally as a human male that goes through these changes at a certain age. And she was there. She was just there. And in looking back, I kind of see that, you know, it's not really anybody's. maybe it was, but maybe a 24, 25, 26-year-old also doesn't have shit figured out yet, is also thinking, not thinking clearly, or whatever you want to, or whatever, however you want to look at it. But either way, all of this came down to her kind of instigating at school when we were together in class. She would sort of, and by the way, I'm telling you the meat of the story so you have all of the details so that I can get to the actual reason I'm doing this podcast. So just bear with me for a few more minutes while I finish telling this story in its entirety so that we can get to what happens after. Okay, so that I've made that clear. Also like and subscribe. So I'd been like, how do I say? I'd been sort of convinced that this was just completely normal. By the way, she was married with 2 kids. She had a family. And by the way, I'll address the family situation because there's a chance that she will see this, or that her family or the people involved, there's a chance they will see this, and I I'll address them shortly whenever we get through the story. So, got to the point where she would be bringing me up to her desk during class and like messing around, like grabbing my dick and like literally just like telling, like writing notes on things like that she wasn't wearing any underwear, or like just writing down on her desk things that she would like. It would be like she would bring students up to her desk to talk them through each of their it's like test scores or something random like that. So, but when I got up there, it was all literally just like she was writing like dirty things on paper, just trying to get me hard and send me back to my desk with a boner. It was a game that she would play, and like as a kid, I'm like, dude, this is kind of hot. It was very hot, and I was very much into it. But I was still embarrassed, and I was just so scared that somebody would find out. I was scared that somebody would, that this would oust me, basically. I was afraid. I was just genuinely afraid that somebody would find out. And then I started to voice this to her, and she would just be like, don't be afraid, don't. And she would reassure me basically that like nobody would find out. There's nothing, like we would keep going on like we were. And then, so we started like, we would make out in like the teacher's lounge or whatever, or like literally I would just follow her into the teacher's lounge, and we would fool around in there and like some, like just rubbing up, like, not really, like there's no touching, like there was not like, there was no penetration of any way like that. We would literally just make out, and she would grab me, and like all of this was clothed at school. But a couple of the other teachers and other students had noticed me going into the teacher's lounge with her and shit like that. So like, I think this has started to raise a few eyebrows, and people were starting to ask questions, I think, at that point. So this all came down to one day. It was after school, and we had, along with her and another one of our teachers who was sort of heading up our youth program, which I was part of. I was in the youth praise band. I was also in the actual church praise band. Like I was in the main praise band and the youth praise band at this church that was next to the Christian school that I went to. And in all of this, we had separated up the age groups that we would all be Sunday school teachers for. So it would be like the youth, which was my age group, that this teacher that I'm talking about was the head over. And I was actually a Sunday school teacher for the kindergarten age kids. Like, I think I was literally just like, I think I was kindergarten through second grade. And it was basically just I would play songs, you know. They knew all of these Christian songs and stuff, and we would play songs together, and we would like tell Bible stories and stuff like that. So that was basically what I was doing, was the Sunday school teacher for the kids. And we had this prayer group where we would meet and we would pray basically for the spiritual health of our Sunday school teachers. And I remember just like, I was on fire for God back then, by the way. Like, I mean, you would have had to have known me then to understand like how involved I was in the church and how I felt about God. You would have to have known me then for any of this to really set in and make sense. But I was very much on fire for God, and we held hands in praying, and the way you would do it was you would hold hands in a circle while praying, and someone next to you would pray, and when they were finished praying, they would squeeze your hand, and then you would pray, and then when you were done, you would squeeze the next person's hand. So that's how a prayer circle works, if any of you didn't know that. And we did a prayer circle for our Sunday school teachers, and obviously this teacher was next to me. And the whole time the prayer circle is going on, while she's holding my hand, she's like, you know, when you've held hands with somebody and they like, you know, move a finger around or something and like affectionately, that's what she was doing the whole time. And I think some other teachers like maybe saw that. You're supposed to keep your eyes closed during the prayer, but I think somebody saw that shit, which will kind of make sense a little later. So after this, she said, I can't take this anymore. We need to take this further, and we need to go somewhere now. And I was like, well, I can't go anywhere now. I've got to give my little sister a ride home first. And first of all, we just got done in a prayer circle. Like, we had just got done talking to God. And in my mind, at that time in my life, it was the most important thing to me. So I was like, there's no way we can do any of this. Like, I feel like conflicted in this. And I just don't feel like God is going to approve of this relationship that we have. And anyway, she was like, okay, then just go home. And she was like, kind of like upset with me, like, okay, we'll just go home then. And then I was like, I started feeling bad. I was like, oh no, like I've upset her now. Like, shit, like what do I need to do? Like this doesn't feel good. I don't like how this feels, that I've upset somebody that I have unknowingly developed actual feelings for at this point. Like, I didn't know. But, you know, I was 15. I didn't know what feelings like that felt like. So at this point, I was like, oh, shit, what do I need to do? And then I take my sister back home to my dad and my stepmom's house at the time. By the way, I was raised by my grandparents. I lived with my grandparents at the time. And so when I take my sister back to my dad and my stepmom's, I was driving back home, and this was I had just recently gotten my license. I was 15. It was within months, and my grandmother had a cell phone that she would give me when I would leave the house. So I would just use my grandmother's cell phone when I was driving, just in case I got into any kind of trouble, needed to call somebody. Anyway, the teacher called that cell phone. She called my grandmother's cell phone and told me all I needed was 5 minutes. She said, all I need is 5 minutes. Come meet me somewhere. So at this point, I was like, okay, well, she's not mad at me anymore. Okay, I'll do this. So we went and met down a dirt road that, this is like out of a movie. We met down a dirt road that my dad literally used to take me fishing down. Like, we used to go down this dirt road to go to like a pond back there and go fishing. And we went down this dirt road. I got out of my truck and went back to her van, and immediately we just started making out. And she started messing with my belt. And at this point I was like, okay, this is it. You know, this is about to be that time that every young man waits for in his life. I'm about to do this. So, like, she pulls my, by the way, for family watches this podcast, you might want to turn this part off if you get a little awkward about things, because you're going to get awkward if you're related to me, okay? So she literally just pulls my dick out and starts going down on me. And like, for the first like couple of minutes, I was like, okay, this is awesome. This is the greatest thing ever. And then I started to think, like, I started to look around, because I have ADD. I get a little, even in that circumstance, I got distracted. And I started looking around, and I noticed that, like, off in the distance, there were these trailer houses, these trailer houses that were like off in the distance. And I was like, man, my paranoia at the time was like, oh man, somebody has binoculars in those houses and they're looking at us over here doing this. They're wondering what we're doing. And so I started to get like, oh no, like, what is going on here? Like, the reality set in of what was actually happening. And then the whole situation of, man, we just got done having this big prayer meeting, and I am out here doing this thing that God is going to be disappointed at me over. And what have I done? Literally, what have I done? So, like, she gets, I was like, look, we got to do something about this. This isn't working. I'm not coming, right? I'm not coming now. And like, something should be happening by now. Like, this is taking a while. So she gets up in her van and starts like playing with herself while I start jerking off and watching her. And then whenever I get close, she gets back down. I blow in her mouth. And then I literally, like, we call this now post-nut clarity. As an adult, I know that this is a thing that exists. It's the whole thing like, well, if you want to do something, the old adage is jerk off, and then if you still want to do it, then you should do it. So, anyway, I had that post-nut clarity at this point where I was like, oh no, I just got a blowjob to completion from a married mother of two who I just left a prayer meeting with, who is also my teacher at the Christian school, and everybody who is friends with me is friends with her, that look up to her, and like, she picks us up from our houses and takes us to do things, and like, she literally does this shit all the time. Anyway, as soon as I bust and she is like pulling her underwear back up, and I'm like, I got to go home. I was supposed to be home by 7 and it's 7:15. I got to go home, or whatever the fuck I said. It was something like that. So I leave and go home, and Like, just walk into my room and say, I'm not feeling that good. I'm going to go straight to bed. Well, my family knew me so well. And they knew something was wrong. My Aunt Marie specifically was like, what's wrong with you? Something's going on. Like, something ain't right. So I go home and I go to bed early. She keeps trying to contact me, and I don't get back in touch with her. So anyway, after that happened, and that's the only time that it happened, I started to be like, okay, we can't do this anymore. I didn't like how that went. That felt weird to me spiritually. And to me, you have to understand, as a 15-year-old, God was everything to me. And I disappointed him. I let God down. In my mind at the time, that's how I looked at it. And I couldn't abide that. So I told her, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, stop this. And she didn't stop. She would still, at school, like, when people were around, she would come up to me and, like, stand really close with her hand down to her side, grabbing my junk, like, in front of people. Like, they could have seen, they could have known. It was, like, at this point, a game to her, I think. And I just kept saying, like, look, I don't want to, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm a sexually interested 15-year-old at this time. And I'm still just like, look, I just don't feel comfortable with how this is going. And I was like, please, we need to figure something else out. And of course she gave me the whole, like, to settle my mind, like, oh, my husband doesn't touch me. He doesn't look at me. He hasn't cared for me sexually in yada, yada, however long or whatever. It's the same line that they all give whenever it's a married person that wants to, hook up. But anyway, doesn't matter. So she literally keeps on doing the same shit and grabbing me, and I guess now's a good time to throw this part in there. With all of this Johnny Depp and Amber Heard shit going on, where now it's like kind of shedding light on how some females can be tremendously manipulative and figure out a way to twist things to fit narratives that they want them to fit. She ended up going in depth about, like, oh wait, I'm saying too much right now. So with this whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, at that time in my life, this was in 99, 2000. What year was I born? It was in 2001. So this was in 2001. It wasn't like a thing to where a woman could advance on a man. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't the sort of thing to where a man could be taken advantage of. Like, that wasn't a thing at the time, it just wasn't. So looking back, I can see that I was being taken advantage of drastically. And it got to the point to where she would say things like, well, you better meet me over here at this time, or I'm going to tell Pastor Larry. And Pastor Larry was our school administrator, and my best friend's dad at the time, like one of my best friend's dad. And he was my dad's best friend as well. And, like, she would just threaten to say that she would threaten trouble. And here is how I learned that here's how I learned that this was like a manipulative situation in which, and the buzzwords that I was not going to say earlier was molested, because I don't like to put it in that term because it's just a hard thing to say. It's a hard thing to get out. But I learned I think it was a Louis C.K. special where he said a kid's biggest fear is trouble, is getting in trouble. So I realized that I was still a kid when this happened because she threatened me with getting in trouble, and that is what made me do the thing. Like continue to entertain this thing. But it started to eat me from the inside. It started to eat me alive. And it started to show. I've always been a very outspoken, boisterous person. I've always been kind of life of the party a little bit. That's always been me. As a child, I would always all my family I would gather them around when I would try to make them laugh or do funny songs or make up funny shit. That was my thing. And I didn't want to do that kind of thing anymore. And I started changing, and everybody started noticing and then asking questions. So one time I had, and this was when I was living with my mom and my stepdad. And you guys have heard, if you've listened to any of these podcasts or any of these old episodes, you'll know that I don't have a relationship with my mom anymore. I haven't spoken to her in almost over a decade. And it's but this was during a time when I was living with her, and she has this way of just harping and not incessantly not letting something die and just continuing a conversation. I used to remember my stepdad would always say, "Would you please just drop it? Could we please just let this go," or whatever, during an argument. And she wouldn't. She would just keep going, and it was fucking annoying. And anyway, she started that with me. She started "What's wrong with you? Something's wrong with you. This is something. And I was just like, "Look, I don't want to talk about this. No, I don't want to talk about anything. I just please leave me alone. I don't." And she incessantly just would not stop bothering me about this shit. And then after a while, I was just like, "Look, I don't want to go to school because I don't want to be around my teacher." And then started asking questions and shit. And I had told my stepbrother everything that had happened. I had already let him know. And so my mom, when she heard this story, I didn't give the story that I gave just now. I gave the Cliff Notes version. Obviously, I was talking to my fucking mom about my first sexual experience, which nobody should have to do ever. Nobody should have to do that. So she ended up making a huge deal out of this and forced me to tell this story to my stepdad. Then she called my actual dad, and she was I was made to explain this story to everybody. So then I get back home to my grandparents' house, where I live with my grandparents, my dad's parents. And I went into the school, and not only that, to add to the stress of all of that situation that I've already talked about just now, I had I went to the dentist, and I had a cavity. And they did an x-ray of a cavity that I had, but they found another tooth that was growing on schedule inside my sinus cavity on this side, right over here behind my cheekbone. And this wisdom tooth was impacted from an accident I was in as a kid, which is an episode that's already happened for sure. Long story that we don't have enough time for today. But it was impacted from a head injury that I had as a kid. And I got the x-ray done, and they found that tooth there in my sinus cavity, and they tested it pulled it all out. But after they pulled it out, they tested it and found out that it was malignant. So I had a cancerous growth inside my face, basically. And I was about to have the surgery to have it all removed during this time of my life when I was 15. Like during that whole thing. It happened at the same time. Anyway, back to the other part of the story that I alluded to at the beginning, not at the beginning, earlier in this episode, where I was like, I'm just going to tell you that part of the story so we can get to what happens after, because this is the part that kind of is fucked up. So, not like the part before, wasn't? So, what happened next was my dad was like, hey, listen, I can see that all of this stuff is bothering him. Like, my mom wasn't a big part of my life ever until like around the end of my high school years or like middle school, high school years when I moved in with her. She was not part of my life. So my dad knew me like they wouldn't. Like my mom and any other people's like in that part of the family would. Nobody would know me like my dad did at this time because we're a lot alike. And he was like, listen, I can tell that this is bothering that boy. Like, y'all, we gotta like calm down with bringing all of this shit out and just be gentle with it. But my mom was like, no, we're going to sue this woman because all my mom cares about is money, which, long story, if you guys haven't seen the episodes where I've talked about it, my mom conned me out of $50,000 when I was 18 years old. So this was 3 years after this situation. So she was just trying to use me as a way to get money for herself so that she could sue this woman. That's what she wanted to do, is take him to court and get money. My dad picked up on that immediately and was like, no, you're not going to exploit this child to get any fucking money. And in that situation, I'm sure that my mom began like, oh yeah, well, I'll show you. So then she starts planning all these ideas in my head about the money that I'm going to come into when I turn 18. And anyway, that's how I ended up giving it all to her, but that's not the story we're talking about. That's just a story of why my mom's a piece of shit and why I don't care to count her as a living part of this earth anymore. But long story short, my dad's like, hey, this kid's not doing well with this. We need to be gentle and not aggressive in this situation. Let's just take care of him, make sure he's okay, and not make this about us, which my mom was trying to do. And anyway, I had to go and explain this story in full to Pastor Larry. And Pastor Larry's daughter and this teacher were very close friends in high school. Like, she spent a lot of time over at their house. Like, she was almost like a daughter to him. And it ruined me to have to say all of these things and change the way that he felt about somebody that he loved and somebody that everybody else loved. Like, all of my friends, they loved her. She would, like I said, she took us to Washington, D.C. on a field trip. Like, she took us to the movies, to restaurants, pizza parties, all the time. Like this, we were always together, all of us. And this was just a really fucked up situation. I had to explain in full detail. And they told me, like, well, first off, we've had some ideas that some of this stuff have been going on because of some things that have been brought to our attention from some of the other students and some of the other teachers. And walked out of the office, and I looked down the hallway, and she was walking out of the classroom with all of my friends. And all of my friends looked at me and saw me walking out of the office with my parents and my principal, the principal, and the administrator, Pastor Larry. Saw me walk out with all these people that I just had to tell that story to. And like they had told me, okay, she'll be fired. First off, she's gonna be fired. She's gonna lose her job. And if you guys want to go and report this, like, and they were like trying to get the legal system involved, and it was just a shitty situation to where we went over, and one of my dad's friends he worked at the courthouse. He was some kind of, I don't know what he did, but he was just one of my dad's friends who would give us advice on this situation and what to do. So we went, and my mom was very much on the boat of like, oh, well, this woman needs to be sued. We're gonna sue this woman for everything that she's worth, and we're gonna get as much out of her as we can at this point, which was her motivation. But my dad was like, look, what is the best thing for him, for me, for his son? What is the best thing for my son in this situation? And the guy was like, look, I'm not saying that this is good or bad, but this is just how the court system works. The court's not going to side with a male in this situation, because a man, like at this time, I was giant. I was a 15-year-old giant, and I towered over all of my classmates pretty much, and like I was just a huge kid. It was like, this is a man standing in front of me right now. Like, nobody's gonna side with him against a teacher. Like, nobody's gonna side with him. It's not worth going through the court system for, which I was happy about, because I didn't want to have to tell this story to anybody else. And it was a really, really fucked up situation where I got to see how the court system worked at an early age, and was like, okay, so this it's not gonna end well for me. It's best for me to just deal with it, and whatever comes of it. So I did, and we left. And at that time, I was about to have to go have that surgery. Pastor Larry, before we walked out of the office, and everybody saw me walk out of the office with my parents and shit, before that, he said, next week you were gonna have to take off to have that surgery anyway. So why don't you just go ahead and take off now? Like, you don't have to, you can go ahead and start the time off from school to go have that surgery and have that tumor removed. So, we'll start that early. And I was fine with that, obviously. But then the teacher got fired on the spot. She got removed, and all of my friends and all of my other classmates were like, why was she fired? Why was she fired? Everybody started asking questions and shit like that. And the consensus, the way that I heard it at the time, the consensus was that I was lying about this situation, and that I was just doing so to get my teacher fired. And that was what everybody had decided. And so in that situation, in one fell swoop, I had been taken advantage of by somebody who had power over me, and I had been ousted by all of my friends who thought that I was just a piece of shit and was trying to lie that someone had taken advantage of me. And then I had to deal with the fact that, like, her husband was saying shit to my dad, like, how do you think we feel? Your son ruined our lives. And stuff like that. And to this day, by the way, if I go to any high school football game or something and see that guy, he still mean mugs me. And I understand. I get it. Like, in his mind, I'm the reason that his whole life kind of fell apart with his kids and family and all that shit. So I kind of get it. But I didn't know what I was doing, man. Like, there was no way that I could have known the gravity of that situation. Like, there was no way. Anyway, so basically I am literally going into the hospital to have this surgery, and the only people who are still around me and in my life are my parents and Pastor Larry and his family. Like, literally, they're the only ones that are kind of there. But that was the situation. So basically, I had to explain my first sexual experience in full detail to almost everybody that I respected in life. And a few weeks later, one of my friends called me and said, look, everybody didn't believe you whenever this shit happened, but I just heard something on the radio, and I believe every word that you said. So apparently, the teacher called into the radio and was talking like some kind of crazy, I don't remember what it was, but my friend Chris said, I just heard something on 103.3, and I believe you. Like, I just heard her call in, and I don't know if she used her name or it was just her voice. And she was just telling a story or whatever. But from what I hear, she called into the radio anonymously maybe and told basically the same story of the story that I just told of how it all went down. And like, one of my buddies heard it and called me immediately and said, dude, I just heard this story on the radio. Like, it was a long time ago. That's how I remember it. It could be inaccurate, but that's the details that I have. And anyway, that's all I got. Like, but he told me, like, dude, long story short, we believe you. He was dating a girl at the time who pointed out to all the rest of the students. She was like, well, she did bring Kelsey up. She did bring Kelsey up to the desk a lot. Like, she brought him up to her desk a lot. Like, and it was an uncomfortable amount. And like, they were talking about how, like, she would always drop me off last, you know? She would always drop all the other students off first, and it would just be me and her. She would drop me off very last. And my house wasn't the closest to hers. So, like, it was just little situations like that one of his girlfriends at the time had put together and kind of said, like, think about this. Like, we're kind of like, we were his friend, and if he really did go through all of this stuff, and then he's alone right now. And, like, think about that. So basically, that kind of saved me mentally, you know, like, just like I was not doing well mentally, you know, I was just not doing well. And I think that this is probably like just with the whole situation of where my mom leaving my dad when I was 2, and then the accident that I got in when I was 8, where I did die 3 times and was brought back like that. And then just having some situations where I had some digestive shit where I was afraid to go to the bathroom. I was afraid to shit for a few years. So I literally shit myself for a few years when I was like 8, 9, 10, 11. Like in those years, I would literally shit myself for a while. And there was just all of these things, one after the other. But now I was 15, this situation had happened, and I was like, fuck, I feel alone. Like, I just feel fucking alone. And even the people that I wasn't alone with, the people that were around me, like, I don't think they understood, what I was going through. They didn't understand the gravity of the situation. And maybe until right now, if any of them ever watch this, like until right now, they might never have understood all of the gravity of that situation. So basically, that saved me mentally, knowing that, oh shit, like it doesn't matter whether or not like somebody tries to defame you basically by saying, oh, he was lying about this stuff and this is it. Like, the truth comes out. And being on the right side of history and being on the right side of just karma, it counts so much, which is how I've lived my life pretty much ever since then. It's just being on the right side of history, like letting karma do its thing. And anyway, fast forward to like another couple of years after my friends. Like at this time, I started smoking weed when I was 15. So I started smoking weed then, and I started drinking pretty heavily. When I was like 15, 16, I was living with my mom, and my mom didn't give a shit like what I did. She didn't discipline me at all for the stuff that I did. Like, I was just allowed to do whatever I wanted. So I was getting hammered all the time, and I was getting high, which the weed was the only thing that would like clear my head. But the alcohol was obviously not good for a 15, 16-year-old. And I was just getting hammered a lot. And that started my addictions. So I'm pretty sure that all of that shit that had happened from the time when I was 2 to the time that I was 15 resulted in my addictive personality, like to where I would just go balls deep into whatever it was that I wanted to do at the time. And thankfully, some of that was music. Some of that was just I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to pour myself into the guitar and I'm going to start writing. So I started writing songs when I was 15 as well. Like I just started, I would write all the time. And that was my way of coping, I think, without knowing it at the time. But anyway, fast forward another few years to where now I am 18 and I drink a lot, and I had kind of abandoned my family that raised me, my dad's side of the family, because of nonsense that my mother had spewed towards them and against them about they don't care about you because they didn't want you to go to the court because they didn't care about you and they didn't want you to get any kind of justice for this thing. And which in now I can hear her saying like, oh, well, she's just manipulating me against my family who actually cared about me and was actually looking for my well-being when all my mom wanted was a paycheck. And anyway, fast forward to when I actually start getting sexually active as an adult. I was 18, and the first sexual experience I had as an 18-year-old when I lost my actual virginity was with a woman who was in a relationship. And she was, I don't know if she was married, but she was in a long-time relationship. And for some reason, I realized, oh shit, like that this has like, this thing that I did when I was 15, this thing that I was a part of, has altered how I view potential sexual partners. Like, it is like any normal person would be like, oh, this person is married, we can't fuck around with that. Like, that's not cool. This person's in a relationship. But that, when I lost my virginity, this woman was in like a committed relationship. And then after that fucking happened, my mom did the same shit that she did the first time and was just weaseling around trying to find information, just literally not letting shit, just like, hey, just leave me alone. I don't want to talk about this. Just for the love of God, like weaseling information out of me and shit. And she would, here's what was fucked up about my mom. She would let me get drunk at the house. She would let me get wasted, and then she would start asking me questions. So it was like she would get me fucked up and then start asking me questions and shit, because she knew I wasn't going to be good at lying, or I wasn't going to be good at fucking whatever I was trying to derail the conversation with while I was drunk. So she would pull shit out of me like that. So she would make me explain, like, she would like make me explain shit that a son shouldn't explain to his mother. Like, I shouldn't have been talking to her about shit like this, but I did, because once again, I was a 18-year-old drunk. Like, I didn't know what was going on at the time, but she kept fucking all of this nonsense up. And then by the time I had turned 18, this was when I had all the money. This is when I had gotten the insurance settlement for the money that I got from the accident I was in, and as a kid. So this was like $100,000 paycheck that I got at 18 years old, and I wrote a check to my stepdad for $50,000 because my mom had convinced me that that was the way to do it. So at that point, and I'm trying to keep my stream of consciousness going, but I see you guys in the chat, and it's so good to see you here, Brittany, Jason, everybody. Thank y'all for hanging out. But seriously, like, I had enough money at that time to where if I would have invested it properly the way that my dad had told me to, and it would have lasted me forever. I could have lived off of those dollars. Like, if I would have, like I said, invested it properly, did the right things with my life instead of just blowing it all and giving it to my mom. Well, she got that paycheck, and then she didn't care anymore. You know, it wasn't a thing. She didn't give a shit anymore. So it was just whatever, do whatever you want. I've got what I needed now. I got the money. So fuck you. I don't need you anymore. I got the thing that I needed from you, which was all the money. But it wasn't that she got the money from me. It was the money that my dad had grew for me. My dad was the overseer of my finances. He grew all of that money from like $70-something thousand to $100,000 in the matter of 10 years. And it was like that's how the whole situation went. And when she left my dad, she took all of his money out of his accounts as his bookkeeper for his business and gave it to my stepdad to buy used cars, because she had an affair on my dad with the guy who became my stepdad. And my stepdad's great. My stepdad's a great guy, or was a great guy, R.I.P. In the end of my life, like, he did a lot for me. He taught me a lot of things, and I learned a lot from him. And his family was good to me, and they still are, and I love them all dearly. But he was another man who she took advantage of in her life, like she did so many others. And I don't know why I always end up, when I get to talking about shit like this, it always comes back to my mom, because I have to explain why I'm so fucked up over shit like this, and she has a lot to do with it. So forgive me for beating that dead horse. But anyway, and by the way, I'm putting a bow on this pretty soon. I plan to keep this somewhere around an hour, and we're about an hour and 10 now. But anyway, hang with me for just a few more minutes, and we're going to put a nice bow on this thing. And I appreciate you guys in the chat. very kind. So after, like, that's pretty much all of that, pretty much after all of that happened from in the first 18 years of my life that has made me the fucked up human that I am today. The tides kind of change a little bit, where with this Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, to where the Believe Every Woman movement, and I am in a very peculiar situation in my life experiences, to where I am skeptical of women who I notice those traits in, that I noticed in my mother or in that teacher. Like, I am very skeptical of people who I notice those traits in. And there's a few that I'm around right now in Austin that I've definitely noticed those traits in. And it's just, I'm not going to drop any names because I'm not that guy. But there's people that I've witnessed those traits in who are in this Austin scene now. And I can see people who are out here that are just trying to use that power of Believe Every Woman to try and defame someone's career and try to defame people's name and make somebody look like something they are not, so that they can progress and that they can go forward, or just to show that they wield some sort of power, which is fucked up, but it's a thing. And I've noticed it, and I probably shouldn't have said anything, because now it's going to be obvious that I'm on to what's going on. But that's not the story that I'm here to tell. The part of the story I'm here to tell is that my buddy Matt Nolan, who I doxed Matt just now, I don't think he'll mind. I don't think he'll mind me saying his name. I hope not. But he reached out to me the other day and was like, "Hey, man, haven't talked to you in a while. I'd like to catch up sometime, just see how you're doing." So I was like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, dude. I'll give you a call whenever I get off work tonight." And I called him, and we started talking, and he said something that made it real for me. He was like, He casually brought up the whole situation because we were all there for it when we were kids. He brought up the whole debacle, and he used the words, how did being molested affect your future? Like, affect your life as an adult. And it was the first time that anybody had ever used those words, or that word specifically, into where I heard it. It may have been used before by somebody, but I am a grown man now, and I know the gravity of the situation that had happened, and I've kind of suppressed it and pushed it down, along with some other things that resurfaced after I quit drinking 6.5 years ago. Once the reason I brought up that I started drinking so much when I turned 15 and all this shit happened was because alcohol works as a depressant, and it'll also suppress things that you want to drink to get away from. So you'll just, you drink and drink and drink. And all of this stuff is then not an issue. But when I quit drinking and I didn't have a relationship that I was, I'd quit drinking and stopped, smoking weed and partying and everything when I started dating dating my ex-girlfriend for like 4 years. But the last couple of years we started drinking and smoking pot and shit like that together, which was a good thing. Because I had a positive reason to have those things in my life, or I had some sort of positivity, and I wasn't depressed, a whole lot. Man, I mean, I guess I constantly was, but it wasn't like, shit, maybe it was. Who knows? But long story short, once I stopped drinking, all of this stuff kind of resurfaced, and in the last 6 years that I've not really gone into detail about all this stuff, but when my buddy Matt literally just used the word, how did being molested affect your adult life? So I pretty much described to him a little bit of what I told you guys. Man, it's just kind of now, as a sober person, I don't feel that I can properly gain consent if and it's hardly ever people that are sober or not drunk, at least in around me in Murrells Inlet, where I lived in Myrtle Beach for the longest time, or especially now in Austin. There's not a lot of sober people, and therefore I don't properly feel that I can gain consent from someone who is drunk, and that doesn't sit well with me. I don't fuck around like that. And that now I am just sort of, anytime any sexual situation comes about, I associate it with how that situation went as a 15-year-old. So now I'm just fearing that every sexual situation that I come into contact with is going to, every sexual situation that I come into contact with is going to end the same way, with a lot of pain and a lot of long time suffering. And I am just turned off. If any of you guys watch Kill Tony, you guys remember in the Justin Martindale episode where I talked about this on Kill Tony, and in that, where it was yeah, it was awesome when it happened. Of course it was. But then I said, it kind of affected me in a certain way. And now I don't even try to fuck. I don't care, because I don't need that. If, and I guess as a human, you do need that. As a man, you do need that sexual interaction. However, I don't need all of the negative things that would come with it if it ended up going similarly to the way that situation went. And I know that it's a little delusional to think, because I'm a grown man now, I'm not a child. So it wouldn't go the same way. But then again, I just feel like I've always felt too that I am destined for bigger things in this world, and I never wanted there to be any kind of light that could be shed on any negative thing that I had done. And in my mind, the only way to accomplish that justly and to have karma on your side is to just not do anything negative, to just not have anything that anyone can use against you. So, because if there's nothing that you've ever done that someone could try to ruin your life over, then your life would never be ruined. And I was just so scared with everybody that had been canceled over all of these things that they have done by just being aggressive or forward sexually with women or whatever. So with all the Harvey Weinstein thing, or just any kind of shit like that was a big deal. I made it a point to never treat any female any differently than I would want a man to treat my little sisters. Like, I would never do that. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I have sent dick pics. Like, I'm not trying to be out here in the world acting like I'm a fucking saint, that I've never done anything like that. But on the times that I have sent stuff, like, I don't think I've ever sent a dick pic to anybody that I haven't either seen naked already, that we have had some sort of sexual thing already, or to someone who I don't think I've never sent anything like that to somebody who would be like, oh no, this is offensive, I don't like this. Like, I don't think that's ever happened. And anyway, and the only reason I'm saying that is just because if somebody's like, oh yeah, well, you wouldn't do anything like your sister, like, you wouldn't do anything to anybody that you wouldn't want anybody else to do to your little sisters, then whatever. But you know what, man? If anybody like has that kind of relationship with somebody else, like, there is a healthy, I have a problem to where I feel like any kind of sexual relationship is unhealthy. And I know that that's a problem that I have. And I have to rewire my mentality to know that, like, there are healthy sexual relationships. And what I'm trying to say is that I have healthy sexual relationships that I've had with people. And with those people, like, I'm comfortable with sending messages like that. Like, and it's reciprocated. Like, there's nothing weird about it, and that's just how it is. And there has been a couple of accidental Snapchats. I will not lie about that. But since we're out here putting everything on Front Street, there's been some accidental Snapchats sent with fat fingers. But what can you do? I've apologized profusely, and it made me look more like a fool afterwards, because they were like, dude, what are you apologizing for? You're good. Like, you don't apologize to me. Like, you're good. So anyway, that's like the situation that my buddy Matt wanted me to describe, was what it's like to be me, a giant dude that looks like this, who was taken advantage of as a kid. There's not a lot of people who talk about that are in a situation like I'm in. And I'm finding more and more about people who experience things like this, who are much older than me. And not to dox any situation, but there's someone who you'll find out about in the next year or so, who went through a similar situation that I did. And then they're going to be talking about it as well. And they're already talking about it, but you guys will hear about it over the next year or so. And when you hear it, you'll be like, oh, that's it. And trust me, you'll hear it. But I'm not going to tell you who it is. But you'll see. And it'll be a big it'll be a big news story. And it's just, and by the way, just for the record, when that big news story comes out, it might come back as to say, oh, dude, he was just trying to knock the legs out from under the story. And that's not. This person that I'm talking about is kind of like giving me the confidence to talk about this in front of you guys. And my buddy Matt calling me, just saying, like, man, you should really do a podcast episode about that and talk about it in detail, because there's a lot of people who have gone through similar situations that are just afraid to talk about it because they're a dude, and because they feel like they can't. And it's it's a sad reason that they can't, but it's because the climate of the climate of things and just the way the world is and has been up until recently with the Amber Heard Johnny Depp stuff, to where no man can be in these situations. Like, how can a man be taken advantage of by a woman? And this is where you finally learn and see, you see it be evident that there are more ways to take advantage of people than taking physical advantage. Like, of course, a man can physically take advantage over a woman, but a woman can 100% take mental advantage and emotional advantage of a man. And unfortunately, that the light rarely makes it to those sort of situations. The light never gets shed on a lot of those situations. And I guess this is just my stab at trying to get just trying to get to the point to where people can feel comfortable talking about this thing. And yeah. So basically that's the whole story. And all of this stuff has kind of resulted in me being who I am, you know, trying to I don't know if it makes a lot of sense. Like, a lot of people will be like, oh man, like, because I say a lot in a joking manner, like, I retired from fucking, like, I retired from sex. I retired. And one of my buddies the other day, I was saying that to, and he's like, man, how could you ever retire from that? How could anybody ever want to, you know, stop fucking? Like, how? This is how. That's how. And it's not that I'm not attracted to, you know, sexual things. It's not that I'm not it's not that I don't want a sexual relationship even. It's just that I know that I can feel the universe or God or whatever you want to call that thing. I can feel it pushing me to like reproduce and have a family and children and all of this, like all of these things. I can feel that urge. And man, just with the situation I came from with my mother, I fear that I have some of her in me, and I don't want to risk putting a child through any part of what I put my mother through, or my mother put me through, rather. You know, I would never want to risk that to create someone. Like, there's a chance that one of my child's, or even if not, even if I do well, there is a chance that my children will carry on the trait that was in my mother, and that they will then create that situation for someone else, and that I will have to witness that go down. And just, I don't think that I'm emotionally prepared to deal with that. So the kind of thing bothers me, and it's sort of like has kept me from being able to freely live the way that I like to, or the way that I would have liked to, rather. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that whenever the time comes and it's the right situation, that I feel like it will be so obvious that I can't deny that this is the situation. Like, this is the person that I need to spend more time with. This is the kind of person that I'm comfortable with having a sexual relationship with. This is like, I feel like it will be so obvious that I won't be able to overlook it. And I haven't seen that yet. I haven't felt that yet. And I feel like I would know when it happens, you know? So anyway, I've been going at this shit for an hour and a half, and I needed to get all of this out. There is another episode that I will need to do that involves another situation that would make a little bit more sense. That would make a lot more sense, actually, to why I feel the way that I feel. And I've never told anybody about it that I know of. I may have when I was younger, but this is just a situation that happened at a much younger age, and that's all I'm gonna go into. Like this shit happened at a much younger age, and I'm not gonna go into any detail about that because I'm really not ready to unpack that yet, and I don't think you guys are ready to hear about it. So one day I will, but until then, needed to get this out. And I really appreciate all of you guys over here for hanging with me through this. Chris Cornelius, Jason, Valish, Scooter, Brittany, you guys, Michael Sweeney, Synthoris on Twitch, Slay in the house, David. I really appreciate you guys for letting me vent all this stuff, and also I know that that most of you guys know me through comedy or music or some sort of fun situation or whatever like that. Like, please don't let anything that I've said to you today affect how you view me going forward, just because, like, the same person that cuts up in Virtual Red Band all the time and makes jokes about shit has dealt with the same issues. Like, it's just because you know them now, I'm not different. You know what I mean? I'm still who I was before you knew all of this stuff, if that makes any sense. And it means a lot to me to just don't, like, if it takes any kind of effort, this is good practice for you to just not lead mentally with that thought when you think of me. Like, and I fear that that will happen, because when it's hard to not see something like that in the forefront of your thought when you think of me after it's such a big deal. But I would just please try to just not view me that way, because that's why I haven't really wanted to talk about this, because I didn't want people to look at me a certain way. And anyway, that's beside the point. I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I'll let you guys know I revamped my website this past week. Yonderwizard.com, ZZERDYONDER, wizard, ZZERD.com. So go there and check out some shit. I got my Yonder merch is there. You can click the Yonder merch. I got hats and stickers and shit. And actually, if you guys just want stickers, DM me on Instagram at Yonder Wizard, and I'll send you stickers for free. Just send me an address, and I'll send you some stickers and shit like that. But if you want T-shirts or hats or mugs or anything like that, get it there. It's pretty good. It's pretty cool shit, I guess. I deleted a bunch of the stuff. I don't have to tell you all that. It doesn't matter. Go look at what I have available and order some shit if you want, or don't. But please like this page, like this episode, share this episode, subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch, follow me on Instagram. Let's see, I have all this stuff down here. I took it away. Bam. So there we go. Yonder Wizard, and as always, screwballwhiskey.com. That's SKREW, ballwhiskey.com. Tomorrow's stories begin right here. I don't have any screwball stuff close to me, or I would hold up the flag. Yeah, so I think we are doing a long Virtual Red Band tonight, if I had to guess. So I'm going to be streaming that as well from my angle. from my view of everything that goes on. I've been doing that. I used to do that a lot, but now I'm doing it again because I have the setup over here. So anyway, I'm excited about it. Also, the song that's playing right now is called Where's My Monster? If you guys want to hear the version with lyrics, you can go check it out. It is on the album That Way Lies Madness on Spotify. Kelsey Hudgins, if you guys want to hear any of my original music, a lot of it is on Spotify, Kelsey Hudgins, or SoundCloud at Kelsey Hudgins. So anyway, so good to see you guys. I love you to death. I really do. My life is enriched by knowing you all through the internet. And I know that seems foolish to say, but it's true. Like I have gained a lot by having you guys just interact with me online, and it really means a lot, and I appreciate it, and I love you all. So that being said, be good people, and I challenge you to do something nice for someone this week, and don't ask for anything in return. Just let it be between you and the person you did it for. We call that pulling a Roger. So go pull a Roger for somebody and just do something nice, and don't tell anybody about it. Anyway, love you guys. Be good people, and I'll see you in a couple hours.